conversation with the candidate continues right now.
Welcome back to our conversation with the candidate, Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy. We're now going to have our questions from our town hall audience of New Hampshire voters here. I might jump in with a follow-up or two, but let's get right into it with Thalia Flores.
Hi,
Thalia.
Thalia.
Nice to meet you. Welcome. Other than your extensive environmental experience, what qualifies you to be the president?
Thank you, Thalia. One of the things of my campaign, one of the principal themes of my campaign is this corrupt merger of state and corporate power, which has turned many of the regulatory agencies into predators against the American public and against the principles of our country. And these are and those agencies are agencies that I think I have a better capacity to reform than almost anybody else who could run for this office. And the reason for that is I've spent many, many years litigating against these agencies. As 35 years as one of the leading environmental lawyers in this country, I filed hundreds of suits, over 500 suits, but about 20% of those were against EPA or the state regulatory agencies. And EPA is a captive agency. It's working, it no longer works exclusively for the American public. It's functioning to serve, in many cases, the mercantile interests of the industries that it's supposed to regulate. So when I sued Monsanto over Roundup, one of the things that we discovered during the litigation process through discovery were email trains between top executives of Monsanto and the head of the pesticide division at EPA, a man named Jess Rowland, who was secretly, during all of those years, working for Monsanto instead of the American people. And unfortunately, that is more the rule throughout these regulatory agencies than not. I'm representing 1,000 families in Columbiana County, Ohio, on the Norfolk Southern spill. And the Norfolk Southern spill is the direct result of agency capture, of the capacity of the railroads to disable DOT's regulatory function and replace it and turn it into a sock puppet for the industry it's supposed to regulate. I've spent 20 years suing on the issues of factory farms and food processing industry, and USDA which was created to foster and protect family farmers in this country and to protect the integrity of our food supply, is now the instrument for the monopoly takeover of American farming by these large corporations. And I'll just give you a quick example. I spent a lot of years suing Smithfield Food. Smithfield developed a form of producing hogs. Smithfield went to alliance with a state senator from North Carolina named Wendell Murphy, who passed about 20 laws that made it almost impossible to sue a factory farm. No matter how much, how badly they stink, how much poison is coming out of the farm, what they dump onto the land, etc. He then left and went into partnership with Smithfield, and they created a slaughterhouse in North Carolina that slaughters 30,000 hogs a day. They were able, because they controlled slaughter capacity, they were able to reduce the price of hogs to 2 cents a pound, from 60 cents a pound. It cost a farmer 32 cents a pound to get that hog to kill weight. So no farmer in the state could survive unless they signed a contract with Smithfield Food. So within a couple of years, 28,000 family farmers had gone out of business and were replaced altogether by about 2,200 factory farms, either owned, about 80% of them owned or operated by one multinational company. And they were making money by dumping their waste into the waters, onto the land, etc. That company then put out of business, because that model was so successful at reducing the price of hogs. They did the same thing in Iowa. Iowa had to adopt the same methodology, and it was adopted all over the country. Then the Chinese, Smithfield Foods then sold itself to the Chinese. So now we have a situation where the Chinese own 80% of hog production all across our country, and they control the landscapes. And, this is a direct violation of Thomas Jefferson's vision of an American democracy rooted in tens of thousands of independent freeholds, all owned by family farmers, each with a stake in our system of government. So it's a threat not only to the middle class, to our food supply, our food safety, but also ultimately democracy. I don't think that there's any other person running in this country who has the capacity to correct those issues. Well, I've dealt so intimately with these regulatory agencies. Usually when a politician comes into office in Washington, they vow to clean up the swamp. But they get there and they're intimidated by these agencies that may have 30,000 or 50,000 employees, and they have no idea how to reform them. So they bring in somebody to run that agency, somebody who is safe, which is usually somebody from industry. So President Trump promised to reform Washington, but he came into office saying, I'm going to, even he even talked about medicine and about vaccines and these kind of things. He then took $1 million from Pfizer, and he appointed a Pfizer partner, Scott Gottlieb, to run FDA. And another Pfizer handpicked nominee, Alex Azar, right from the middle of the pharmaceutical industry, to run HHS. And Gottlieb then ushered through the Pfizer product and made $88 billion for his company, and then left FDA to rejoin the Pfizer board. That's not ending the swamp. That is making the swamp even deeper. And I know when I go in there how to fix DOT, how to fix HHS, NIH, CDC, EPA, all of the three later agencies, because I've litigated against them, and I've been thinking for 40 years, how do you unravel corporate capture at these agencies? And I know how to do it. I know how to reorganize those agencies to end the revolving doors, to end these financial entanglements with the industries they're supposed to regulate. And in many cases, I know the specific individuals in those agencies who need to be moved out. And that's why I think I'm in better shape than anybody else to reform, to get the kind of reforms that the American people want.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Eileen Guerin.
Hello, Mr. Kennedy. I was a Democrat for many years, decades, but the Democrats do not accommodate pro-lifers. What reason can you give me, to a pro-life voter, to vote for you regarding this divisive issue?
Well, the only thing I can say to you on that issue is that I understand, I come from a family I'm pro-choice. So I don't think there's anybody in this country who has worked harder for medical freedom, for bodily autonomy than me, and that applies to vaccines. I don't think the government should be telling us what medical products we can't take, what procedures we ought to endure. I don't think the government has any business telling people what they can and cannot do with their body. I'm not going to be in a position, allow myself into a position where I'm going to be telling a woman to bring a child to term that she doesn't want. I don't think it's a good solution. I think every abortion is a tragedy. And as I said, I came from a family that was very, very divided on this issue. I've seen pictures of third-term abortions, and I'm appalled by them. And will do everything I can to end those in other ways. But I don't think the government, I think the worst solution is that the government is involved in decisions that should belong to a woman.
Next question comes from Aldrian Rostrom.
Hello, thank you for coming. Our country went to war in a foreign land over a rumor of weapons of mass destruction. We have weapons of mass destruction here, semi-automatic weapons, easily available with little documentation in our own country, and they're killing children. What will you do to confine semi-automatic weapons to use only by military and law enforcement?
I am not going to take people's guns away, and I believe in gun control myself. But anybody who tells you that we can end the violence to our children that's going on now by removing people's guns, at the margin that has been left to us by this very expansive Supreme Court decision is not being truthful with you. So, I think just legally, because of the Supreme Court decision, because of the expansive vision, the view that the Supreme Court has taken on the Second Amendment, that it makes it really impossible to actually do anything about it in terms of limiting people's guns. I also want to say this, that I have spent a lot of my life in rural communities in this country, and there is a gun culture in those communities that is closely tied to people's identities. And so those people, that a large group of Americans, see it as almost an existential threat. When people in my political party and people like myself say to them that we're going to take your guns away, and it hasn't worked. It has polarized our country more, and it's made people dig in more. And I'm trying to end the polarization in our country. And so I think that this, and particularly in this point in history, in the last 3 years in this country, we've seen an all-out assault on our Bill of Rights. We've seen for the first time the government participating in censoring people's speech. There was, these revelations came out this week that the FBI has been collaborating with the SBU, the Ukrainian agency, to censor speech of Americans critical of U.S. policy against the Ukraine. We've seen the CIA and the FBI now had during at least the last 2 administrations, at portals at Twitter where they can identify people who are speaking against government policies and silence them. And so we had these assaults on freedom of speech. We had the government come in and order, without any scientific citation, without any democratic process, the closure of every church in this country for a year. We had an assault on freedom of religion. We had an assault with we had these social distancing regulations and policies that again, were not based upon, we now know, and Rachel Walensky and Anthony Fauci have acknowledged, they were not based on science. There was no democratic process. There was no public hearings. There was no notice and comment rulemaking. No scientific citation shown to any of us. And yet that was a direct assault on our right to assembly. We had every business, 3.3 million businesses in this country, closed down in violation of the Fifth Amendment right to due process and just compensation. None of them were given due process or just compensation. We had the Seventh Amendment jury trial shut down against anybody who was providing a medical countermeasure, no matter how egregious your injury, no matter how reckless or negligent their behavior, you can't sue them. And that's a violation of the Seventh Amendment. So there's a lot of people in this country who are watching this happen and say our entire Constitution is under attack. And the only provision that was not under attack is the Second Amendment. And a lot of the people who believe strongly about guns say, well, the reason they didn't attack the Second Amendment is because we have our guns. Now, whether you believe that or not, and I'm not going to take a position on that one way or the other, but going after people's guns at this point in history, to me, is just going to cause more polarization and make it so that we can't listen to each other anymore, because we get put into these kind of tribal silos which we have to somehow figure out a way to get past. So, my policy is going to be to figure out ways to protect these children. We cannot have any more school shootings. And, one of the things, even if that means protecting schools the same way that we protect airlines, you don't get shootings on airlines anymore. If we have to do that, we have to protect our children. The other thing we need to look at is the other reasons why this may be happening in our country. And, I've gotten ridiculed for saying that we need to look at the issue of the SSRIs. But it's one of the issues we need to look at. We need to look at video games. We need to look at the way that social media is affecting people's behaviors. and do the scientific studies that are required for that. There has never been a time in human history when strangers would walk into a room of children and begin shooting people. What happened? You know, we had guns when I was a kid. I went to school where we had a gun club in the school, and kids would come with their rifles to school. And nobody even imagined that somebody would go in that school and start shooting children. There's other countries that have almost as many guns as we do, like Switzerland, that don't have school shootings. So what is going on here? The last school shooting in Switzerland was 21 years ago. We have school shootings every 21 hours. One of the things we need to look at are SSRIs. There is one study that shows that at least 23% of school shootings have that the shooter was at the time or prior or before was on SSRIs. So, and if you look at the label, manufacturing the insert for these drugs, they say on them homicidal and suicidal ideation and action. So it's not insane to say we should look at this. Something changed in our country that started this, and it's not the guns. Because we've always had the guns. Something else happened, and we need to be looking, and that's the function of NIH. This is the biggest health threat in our country, these shootings. NIH is supposed to be doing science that actually looks at the cause. The problem is it doesn't want to do anything that will offend the pharmaceutical industry. So they will not even do a genuine study, and it's hard for the public or the press to figure it out because of the HIPAA laws. You can't get that information on these shooters. But NIH can get the information, but it won't do it because it does not want to offend the pharmaceutical companies, and we ought to at least be looking at that.
Mr. Kennedy, we've got about a minute left. I want to ask you a quick question here about the immigration. The crisis at the border couldn't be worse. What if in 4 years we're looking at not just 250,000 coming to the border every month, but 500,000, 750,000? What do you do with all those people?
I would like to have time to answer that question and tell people what I saw when I went to the border, because I saw something that was incomprehensible to me. It took me 3 days down there to actually understand what is happening and how absolutely insane it is. Where, I watch probably 250 people walk across the border. They get registered right there. The Border Patrol no longer blocks them. These people aren't sneaking. They're coming across in busloads. And they're brought there by the cartels, which are now running U.S. policy, U.S. border policy. There's 7 million have come across in 3 years. They just walk across, and then they're registered by the Border Patrol,
Mr.
and then
Kennedy,
they're put on planes to any place in the world.
Why don't we pick this up? We'll pick this up on the website,
Sorry.
okay? All right,
Yeah.
so hey, this is continuing on the web, another 30 minutes commercial free. Next week, for those of you watching on TV, Marianne Williamson is here for conversation with the candidate. But hey, we're going to continue with immigration with Robert F. Kennedy when we come back. Thank you for watching Conversation with the Candidate.